The deal with the city in hindsight was something we could have done a better job with, and I'm not sure, that would have probably been more strategic relationship with the mayor at the time, really getting him to embed us as something that was part of a big idea for the city. And we've always been a bit of an outsider in the discussion, so we could have done better on that.
I laugh at the first conversation I had with Jeff and Shauna, because in their eyes, we could just talk about a one-page agreement and get on with it, you know. And I laughed at them because I thought, nah, that's the height of naivety, right? And I said, you do have to appreciate that projects of this complexity and magnitude take a decade from conception to completion.
I think the difference in this process from the typical commercial transactions that we work on is that it was so different. So it was a new school project. I mean, this is social entrepreneurship. It's new, it's different. And we were dealing with counterparties who were working in an old school environment. And there was a lot of work and coaxing and bridging and interpreting with Evergreen to bring people over to, I know we've got to deal with these old school requirements, but we've got to make them work in this context. And it was interesting. It was interesting.
I wish we designed a more collaborative working relationship with the City of Toronto. I think we are still viewed, and we certainly have been viewed, and it's embedded in our documents, that we are sort of viewed almost like a developer, not as an agent of the city in a sense. And that's led to a series of consequences in the working relationship with the city that could have been much, much more constructive.
The whole lease negotiation with the city was itself a tenant. The property is owned by the Metro Toronto Conservation Authority. And so the simple paperwork aspect of it, the numbers of parties, the number of pages, the number of lawyers, and the time that it took, everybody working with good intentions, but it dragged on and on. And that was, to me, a real challenge, and from time to time it was upsetting. Not at other people, just in terms of process, that it was taking too long and it was too difficult.
I knew that it would take a long time, and it was really just a matter of patience, and it was a question of whether or not the city's timeline and Evergreen's timeline, whether they had to diverge at a certain point. And I think that the city was committed to it, Evergreen was committed to it, but just getting both parties on the same timeline, that was I think the main risk.
The agreement discussions, the lease and all that, was painful on both sides. There's no question, but it also had to be done ultimately to protect both sides and cementing that understanding. So, you know, you think you understand the other side, but it's not until you get into a room full of lawyers and all these questions get asked and you know, push comes to shove, does it finally shake out? And as much as it was painful, it was successful in the end, and that's all that we both cared about.
I think that it's completely unique that the City of Toronto let a 30-something entrepreneur that had fairly good tree-hugging credentials onto the most important project in Toronto, arguably the most important monument. They gave it to this young guy. Okay, it took a lot of work, but the fact that Jeff just assumed they'd give it to him, I found, like, just what are the chances of anything in Paris or London or New York ever being given to anybody or to a committee? The city, in the end, gave it to a young, tree-hugging, 30-something kid with a vision. Well, that's amazing. That's extraordinary. What a leap. And sure, it was a bureaucracy and it was a struggle, but they did it somehow. Don't you find that, I mean, isn't that amazing?
looking down. I can't see great things ahead for you and me. Now the sun is shining.